Hey everyone, how's it going? Darn the compressor. Hang on a second. Alright, so the compressor finally stopped. Hang on a second. Alright, so third time's a charm. Rob just came over and he needed to ask me a question. Alright, so what am I working on now? I'm working on that F-150. Remember the one with the gear ratio error in first? And I told you I'd put a lead frame in it. And a lot of you were like, what in the heck is a lead frame? Okay, well, I have a new one here, and I'm going to show you. The one that I put in there is a new one from Ford. Ford's the only place you can get them from. And they're a known problem. Ford is actually warrantying this one for us, knowing what we're going through. Because it's a possibility the new one is no good. It's always a possibility. But anyway, let me show you the new one. I'm going to explain what we're going to do. This is going to be a two-part video, and I'll explain that in a minute. So here is a lead frame. This bolts up to the top of the valve body and gets sandwiched up in between the valve body and the rest of the transmission, the case of the transmission. So now this piece, basically it's like got the wiring harness built into it. That there is an output speed sensor. That there is an input speed sensor. If there's a problem with either one of those speed sensors, you have to replace this whole thing. There's the plug that goes to the outside of the transmission. This is basically your neutral safety switch, so to speak. This is what, when you're shifting gears, it's like park, reverse, neutral, drive, 2, 1, you know, stuff like that. This is where all your solenoids go, your solenoid packs. This is just a centering guide pin. So now, that piece there, let me show you real quick. As you can see, I already drained out the fluid. That piece goes to the back of the transmission right there. That's the connector. Right there. The wiring that I had fixed on this once before is up top there behind where you can see like the not bare wires, but you can actually see the wires exposed in loom. Up further is where I actually fixed the wires. So now I've been draining it out, trying to get out as much as possible. The truck has actually been sitting on the lift for more than a day. So the torque converter should be completely drained out, or pretty darn close to it. But I'm still going to have fluid in the pan. So this is basically going to be the same thing as before. I'm not going to show you taking a pan off because I already showed you that with the other video. Now, the reason this is going to be a two-part video is because of the shift solenoid. We are going to replace the number one shift solenoid. I spoke to a bunch of people, and there's a bunch of different possibilities here as to what could be the problem. The fact that the fluid is clean, doesn't show any signs of being burned up or anything like that. There was no metal in the pan, none of that. We're really doubting that the transmission is worn. However, there are certain pieces in this that could be worn that could create this problem. Let me just unplug this real quick. Hang on a second. It's just getting to me, that hissing noise. Drawing a blank, where was I? Okay, the reason it's going to take 2 days, or 2 parts. So what we're going to do is we got to get a shift solenoid. Well, why didn't we just order a shift solenoid? Well, guess what? Ford doesn't know what shift solenoid this takes. Nobody does. Apparently, there's a couple of different ones that could be in the number one spot. So I have to take it apart and tell them which shift solenoid it is, because there is a choice. Several choices, apparently. And, you know, it's however much the solenoid is, so I don't want to order, let's just say it's $100 a solenoid and there's a choice of 4. I'm not going to order $400 worth of solenoids. Plus, it's an electrical item. A lot of times, you can't return an electrical item unless it's not opened, but, you know, got to open up the package to see which one it is. So, anyway, that's where that comes from. So, what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to drop the pan. I'm going to, like I said, I'm saving that fluid too. I'm going to drop the pan, take the filter out. I'm going to recheck the bottom of the pan, make sure that everything looks good. And we're going to drop that valve body down, and I'm going to put it on the bench. And at that point is when we're going to take the old lead frame off, and I'm going to leave it off because that old lead frame has to go back. That's, like I said, they're warrantying it for me. You can only get that from Ford. I think I mentioned that. So I'm going to do all of that, and then this way I can order the parts for this thing tomorrow. And once I finally do get the right part for solenoid, or the #1 shift solenoid, once I get that and install that, then I'll finish up the video. This way I can put the valve body back together. I'm just going to inspect a few things. I'm going to really go and be very precise on checking that connector that goes at the back of the transmission, you know, checking a few things just to make sure, because there is a possibility of other issues, you know, like with the connector or whatnot. I remember I did check it before, but anything's a possibility. The fact that this thing is setting a gear ratio error when it's at a dead stop tells me it's probably electrical. Because how does it know a gear ratio? It knows by the movement of the vehicle, because it's got a predetermined number for first gear, second gear, third gear, and so on. But if it's at a dead stop, which it is every time this problem happens, it's at a dead stop. So how does it know what the gear ratio is if it's at a dead stop? It doesn't. So that's why I'm saying it's got to be an electrical issue. At least I'm pretty confident. Unless it's a pressure issue, but it's not setting any pressure type codes. It's just setting that one shift solenoid code, or gear ratio error code, I should say. So, all right. Like I said, I'm not going to show you dropping a pan on this, but I will show you once I have the valve body exposed. I will show you from that point on. All right, so due to technical difficulties, I come to realize that there was a couple of segments there of me taking the filter off, showing you how to just pull it down. Basically, you just grab it and twist it and pull, but you should have seen that in the other video. And me disconnecting that electrical connector, which is basically you just grab that lever that was there, twist it, pull it out, and then there's a cup there that you have to pull out, a sealing cup. On the other part, when I'm going back together, I'll show you that basically it's the opposite of what I did to take it apart. But for some reason, none of the audio came out, so I apologize for that. And the first 2 minutes of the next segment that's happening right after this is going to be no audio, and then all of a sudden I realized that the audio wasn't coming through. So that's when I fixed it. So for the first 2 minutes of the next section here, you'll realize that, hey, there's no audio, but then it comes back in and it finishes throughout this video. So apologize for that. Huh? It might have shut itself off. I apologize if it did. Okay, so now it's going to start to drain quite a bit of fluid, and I just got it all over my arm. But what are you going to do? That's all right. You're going to make a mess. You're going to get it all over you. Let me back you up a bit So you can see the catastrophe that's about to happen. It's not really a catastrophe, it just has a tendency to make a mess. Really surprised the microphone turned off. Usually what I do is I will drop that one down as I take this thing down. Now, I don't know if you noticed, there was a blue piece that came down with it. All I'm doing right now is I am laying the valve body down in the pan that's below me so I can let it drain. So hang on 1 second. I'm going to explain a few things here to you. I'm just going to get these gloves cleaned off before I can touch anything. Because now I'm covered in tranny fluid. All right. So there it is, laying down there. I just tipped it upside down and let it drain out. That's the inside of the transmission there. Don't see anything out of the ordinary. Everything looks okay. You got to be mindful of these seals. And also, this valve had dropped out. That's normal for it to drop out. And this is where you need transmission assembly gel when you go back together, because you have to take that, stick it up inside that hole, and you have to hold it up there somehow. How do you hold it up there? Transmission assembly gel. All right, so everything looks good. The tranny fluid smells good. So let's get this thing over to the bench and let's pick up there. All right, so with it on the bench, you got to know which bolts to hold this together. And it's this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, I believe, is all of it. And these are a different size than the ones that held the valve body to the transmission case itself. And a lot of times, a good indication of if somebody's been in there before that didn't know what they were doing, you'll find that these things are slightly rounded out. And I can't tell you how many times I've run into that where these inside of these torque screws are slightly rounded out. So I knew somebody was there before me. I think this is it. I think that's all of them. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And then this lifts up. And here is the lead frame. Or it might even be called a control unit. I forgot what they might have referred to it as. But that's the whole shebang there. And I don't physically see anything wrong with it. But it doesn't mean there's not something wrong with, you know, a speed sensor or anything like that. Now, what I have to do is I have to find out which one of these solenoids is the first gear solenoid, because I don't even know. So let me look that up, see if I can't determine that, and then we are going to remove that, so then this way I can match it up and get the right one from Ford. It'd be really nice if they had it in stock and I can have it tomorrow, but I kind of doubt it. Usually when they have that much of a choice, usually they won't have them in stock, but let's find out. Okay, so from everything I've read, it's this one. Notice something? And that thing was sitting like that. Uh-huh. I think that may be our problem. Interesting. Okay. Well, and here's the funny thing. Actually, let me wash my hands off. Hold on a second. That solenoid there, when I read up on it, let me show you what I'm looking at. I find it's kind of funny because remember it defaulted to 5th gear. Let me just show you this real quick. All right, so see solenoid number 5. Solenoid number 5. SSA forward 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch. See that? So it's for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe that's why it shifted 1, 2, or it shifted, it went down on 1, then went to 2, went back to 1, and said, something's really wrong here, and then went to 5th. Because maybe it knew it was never going to engage 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I don't know. Interesting. Interesting. For a truck that came in with a no start and in limp mode to this. Okay. Well, just so you know, too, the only thing the customer's paying for is the solenoid. We already spoke to them in regards to this. We're warrantying the lead frame. Ford's warrantying it just in case. And the only thing he's actually paying for is the solenoid itself. So, for those of you that might be questioning it. But yeah, okay, interesting find. Really interesting find. I'm very happy I see that. So, actually made my day. That's a good find. I'm very happy with that. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully once I could put a new O-ring in it, but I'm not going to just put an O-ring in it and then stick it in a car to find out I have a bad solenoid. You know what I mean? We already went with, we're going to have to replace the solenoid, so we're going to replace the solenoid regardless. So, all right. Hopefully you're getting something out of my videos. If you are, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. I hope you learned something or got something out of it. I did. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.